All right, my little math friends, here we are in lesson 2.3a, and we are moving into the end of chapter 2. And with the end of chapter 2, that means we're going to start doing all the different math operations that we've been working on with positive and negative numbers. Okay, we're going to combine adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing integers all into the same type of math problem. Okay, so now that we're doing all these different operations, we need to review the order of operations, and I've seen a lot of you guys out there using the order of operations so far this year. That's awesome. That makes me happy. So we're just going to do a quick review of order of operations because that's going to tell us how to work through longer math problems. Okay, so now we're going to have some longer math problems, so we need to know the steps to be able to work through those. Okay, so here we have Gemdas. All right, and Gemdas stands for some things. It tells us which order to go through to solve math problems. The G stands for grouping symbols. Okay, and grouping symbols include things like you guys have seen, like parentheses. All right, and I've seen a lot of you guys say that you always do what's in the parentheses first. That's awesome. But sometimes we have brackets and other stuff. So now that you guys are kind of moving into higher math, instead of just calling this parentheses, we're going to call this grouping symbols. Okay? And the next thing, the E stands for exponents. All right, and an exponent looks like this, where you have a regular number raised to a power, like the power of 2. All right? So with these two here, grouping symbols and exponents, we're not going to really use those in this chapter. So I'm going to put an X here. Okay, so we're not going to use those. It's good to know what they are just for review, but we're not going to be using these in this chapter. So what we're going to be working on is these last four, where the M stands for multiplying. Okay, and the D is going to stand for dividing. All right, and we work our multiplying and dividing. When we see a math problem, we're going to start from the left of the math problem and we're going to move to the right of the math problem. Okay, so we're going to do all of our multiplying and dividing first, and then we're going to move on to do all of our adding and subtracting. Okay, those are the last two things we're going to do. And when we're doing the adding and subtracting, we're going to go from the left of the word problem, or I mean the left of the math problem, to the right of the math problem. Okay, so these are the four things that we're going to be focusing on for this chapter. Okay, we're not going to see the grouping symbols and the exponents. We're going to be focusing on these four operations: multiply, divide, add, subtract. Okay, so let's get into our first set of math problems and let's take a look at how we're going to work these out. All right, so before we get to working these, I'm just going to write our Gemdas here to the side. Okay, this is always a good thing to do when you're running into complicated math problems. Remember, we're not going to be using these right now, okay? But we are going to be using multiplying and dividing, and we're going to work from the left of the problem to the right of the problem. Once we get all of our multiplying and dividing done, then we're going to move on to our adding and subtracting, and we're going to work from the left to the right. Okay, so now that we got that here on this screen, we're going to go ahead and work out these problems. Here is our first problem right here. And looking at this, you might be thinking, well, Mr. Peterson, you said there's going to be no parentheses, okay? And I see some parentheses right here, okay? I am not trying to trick you, all right? You are correct. That is a parentheses here, but there is nothing to work out inside of that parentheses, okay? So that's why we don't need to worry about the parentheses in this type of problem, because there's no operation inside of here with the 13. All it is just the 13 and the -6 out here to show that we're going to be multiplying those. Okay, if there was something inside of here to do, we would take care of that first. You're absolutely right. But this is just keeping the 13 separate over here, and it's showing that we're going to multiply. Okay, and speaking of multiplying, that's the first thing we do first, is any multiplying and dividing. And we have our multiplying right here. We have -6 times 13, and if I multiply that together, that is going to get me 78. All right, and I'm going to make that a -78 because these two are different from each other, and our rules say that when that happens, our answer is going to be negative. Okay, so we just got done with this right here, so I'm going to cross that off because it helps to not get confused with the rest of the math problem we're going to work out. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and drop down everything that is still left. I have a minus 21. Okay, and we just have one last step to do, our subtraction. So that's what we're going to take care of right now. And because it's subtracting, that means we're going to have to do same, change, change. So keep the -78 the same. Change the minus sign to addition. Change this 21 into a -21. And now we can go ahead and add those together. They are both negative, so we're going to add like normal. And we're going to make that -99 because we're going to come up with a bigger negative. Okay, so there's our answer to number 1. All right, let's take a look at number 2. Here is our math problem with a couple different steps. So we take care of our multiplying and dividing first. Here we have our division problem here, and in the parentheses we just have a -12. We have nothing else in the parentheses, so there's nothing to do here except just the dividing. Okay, so we're going to take 12, divide that by 6. That's going to get me 2. And our rule says because they're different, our answer needs to be negative. And then I'm going to cross that off to show that I'm done with it so I don't get confused. All right? Then you're just going to drop down what you have left. We have the +2. All right, we do the math on that. That's going to come out to 0. -2 plus 2 is going to get me 0 for that problem. All right, so there is number 2. We just take care of that. Now let's move on. We'll take a look at problem number 3. We're going to go back to our steps. We're going to do all of our multiplying and dividing first. Okay, so looking at this problem, we have a division problem to do right here at the end of the problem. Okay, so even though it's over here at the end, that's what we got to take care of first. Okay, so here's our division. We're going to go ahead and work that out first. We have 39, -39 divided by 3. All right, so if I take -39 and I divide that by 3, that's going to give me -13. Okay, I'm making it negative because these two are different from each other. So our rule says that has to be negative. All right. And then what I'm going to do before I bring any of this stuff down, I'm going to wrap this -13 in some parentheses. Okay, I'm just going to give it a little parentheses hug there. All right, and that's going to help us out because we got all this other stuff that we still have to bring down, and I don't want things to get mixed up. So if you have a negative like that, wrap that puppy in parentheses, and then that way it keeps things nice and in order. All right, so drop down. This is done. We'll cross it off. Drop down everything that's still left up here. We have a minus sign. We have a 15, and that happens to be a -15. Okay, so you drop down everything that's still left. That's important. Now we're moving on to our last steps here, our adding and subtracting. We have a subtraction problem here, and our rule says we got to do same, change, change when we see subtraction now. So keep the -15 the same, change your minus sign into a plus, and change this -13 into a +13. Now we're ready to rock and roll, and we'll get this math problem solved. So we have a -15, we're adding a +13. Since they're different, that means we got to take them away from each other. 15, take away 13 is 2, and we're going to make that negative because we have more negatives than positives. All right, so our answer for that is going to be -2. Okay. All right, guys, you're doing great. We got our last one here. This problem is just a little bit longer, but we're still going to work this one out. Our same steps. We're going to go back here to our order of operations. We're going to do all of our multiplying and dividing first. Okay, and this time, if you're looking at this math problem, we have a multiplication problem right here in the middle of it. Okay, we have negative 42 times 2. All right, so that's the first thing we're going to take care of. If I multiply that together, that is going to get me 84. All right, and I'm going to make that negative because these two are different from each other. So that means our answer has to be negative. All right, just like we did up here, guys, wrap that negative 84 in some parentheses. Okay, just give it a nice parentheses hug there. Okay, so that way things don't get complicated when we bring down everything else that's still up here. Okay, we got this done. Cross it off, that'll help you out. And drop down everything that is still up here. Okay, so over here we have a 27 plus, and then over here on this side we have a minus, and we have a negative 8. All right, drop down everything that's still there. I'll bring down my equal sign. All right, so now we still have a couple steps left to do. So we're going to take care of our adding and subtracting, and we're going to move from the left of the problem to the right of the problem. So I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to take care of everything, and I'm going to move this direction all the way to the end of the problem. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to take care of is these two guys right here. I'm going to work out the math between this 27 plus negative 84. All right, they're different from each other, so that means we're actually going to have to subtract them. We're going to have to take them away from each other. So when I do that, if I take 27 away from 84, that leaves me with 57. And because our negative 84 is bigger than our positive 27, that's going to give me more negatives left over. All right, that step's done. Cross it off. Now drop down everything that's still left. We have a minus sign, and then we have our negative 8. All right, very important to bring down everything because it can get confusing fast if you don't bring that down. All right, and I don't want you guys to get the wrong answer. I want you guys to get the right answer on this because you guys know what to do. All right, so our last step, we're going to subtract these two. We have a subtraction, so that means we got to do same, change, change every time we see subtraction. Leave that negative 57 alone. Do not do anything. Change this minus sign into a plus sign, and change this negative 8 into a positive 8. All right, now since I've changed it, I can go ahead and do the math. I have negative 57. I'm going to be adding positive 8. They're different, so that means I have to take them away from each other. And when I do that, I'm left with 49 because I have more negatives. Make that guy a negative 49. All right, and there is our answer for number 4. All right, thank you guys so much for watching and pay attention to this video. Don't forget to try this problems. There are 2 of them to do. Click that green question mark at the end of this video to get those done. I will see you guys next time in class.